So recently I was asked where some of the assets in my map RP Hogwarts SBS actually came from originally. So I thought it'd be a cool idea to go and make a video walking around and kind of explaining where stuff came from and talk about a little bit of the development history of the map. This, of course, is coming after Facepunch is continuing to blacklist servers that are running modified versions of my map or, Harry Potter style game modes in Gary's mod. You can no longer do anything Harry Potter related in Gary's mod. We still don't know a lot of Facepunch's legal situation, but they are continuing to blacklist servers that use any Harry Potter assets, like stuff ripped from games, and just in general. For example, this visage of the castle, this look of the castle, is arguably copywritten by Warner Brothers in some way. So even if you changed all the textures here and replaced all the models with something different, the general layout of the exterior of this castle is still basically Hogwarts, no matter which way you spin it. Every texture you're currently looking at right now is actually from a Harry Potter game, except a few. So that would be the skybox texture, which I made, these clouds that are moving, I also made. The wood on this door, that's from Cobble. These rocks here, those are from Half-Life 2 Episode 2. And the rock texture here on this displacement is from Dear Esther. Again, literally every other texture you're looking at is from a Harry Potter game. Specifically Order of the Phoenix and then maybe some Deathly Hallows stuff mixed in there. There are also various textures used around the map that are actually from Chamber of Secrets, and I'll talk about those a little bit later because there's some very interesting stuff going on with them. In fact, if I go through here and just start scrolling, you're probably going to see a lot of familiar textures. Like this one, this one, this one, this one. This can go on, like obviously this one, this is the brick used throughout the entire school. This is the boathouse wood, this I use freaking everywhere. That I use in a few places, this wood. I could go on all day, I could just keep scrolling through this, and you can even see like this, that's used. A lot of these don't actually have normal maps, so many of the textures I did manually create normal maps for. And if you're at all familiar with Crazy Bump, you'll know the signature look that Crazy Bump gives to textures whenever you use Crazy Bump to create a normal map from a photograph like this. But again, I'll talk a little bit more about, the textures in a minute. I want to talk about the interior layout of the school. So that would be how hallways are positioned, where classrooms and things are, where stuff is. The vast majority of the layout is my own unique design. Of course, except for some key areas. So for example, right here, Gryffindor Common Room. This is pretty much perfectly exactly what the layout of Gryffindor Common Room is in Harry Potter. The same goes for the Slytherin Common Room. This is more or less exactly what the layout is in Harry Potter, at least this room. You don't ever see this room over here, but you do get a shot from the movie, like right here, kind of, and you can definitely see that there's a hallway or some sort of opening in the wall right there. I built this and laid it out entirely from like 3 or 4 screenshots from the movie that I took and just replicated. I do that a lot. I did that for the 3 broomsticks in Hogsmeade too. I completely reverse engineered the layout of the building just from a few shots in the movie. Another thing is potions. So potions is very inspired from the movie as well. It's not perfect. In the actual one, there are little rooms over here, but the general layout here of potions is more or less from what it would be in the Harry Potter world. The same goes for the bathroom here. This is pretty much what a bathroom would look like. This was actually based off of like a Game Boy Advanced game. Like that's what the layout is kind of trying to replicate. This hallway here is inspired by the movies, of course, from that famous hallway in a real-life place. That, on the other hand, because it's a real-life place, they couldn't really claim that the look of this is, copywritten by them. However, all these textures that you're seeing, pretty much every single one except the wood on that door, this model right here, and yeah, every texture besides that, and this sign, that's my sign, everything you're seeing besides the things I just listed are from a Harry Potter game in some way. Now the models, obviously, like these little trims and things, these archways, I made those, I modeled those from scratch. Those are my models, but the texture on those models are from a Harry Potter game. These torches, I use everywhere. These are like my favorite model to use. These torches are taken directly from the Order of the Phoenix game. And if you look at these characters here, you'll probably recognize those if you've ever played Hogwarts Roleplay on Gary's mod, because the vast majority of models from Hogwarts Roleplay are taken from the Order of the Phoenix game. This infirmary, the design is very simple. These beds are from Order of the Phoenix again, I believe, but the design of this room is actually kind of just based off of Steinman's infirmary. So the real infirmary in Hogwarts, there is references for it. It doesn't look anything like this. It's completely different. It's very ornate. The grand staircase, of course, is, you know, the visage of this. No matter how you put it, no matter how you arrange the stairs, this is something that is exclusively Harry Potter. You can't really claim this as, you know, anything else. This is entirely uniquely Harry Potter. There's no getting around it. The stair models, of course, is another thing I modeled entirely from scratch, but the texture on them, again, is from a Harry Potter game. So you'll see that a lot throughout this whole video, is that most of the stuff I modeled from scratch, or I referenced heavily from other existing models, but most stuff I did model from scratch, and the textures are just taken from a Harry Potter game. So all of these paintings here, most of them, except for maybe this one, and a few other Easter egg ones, most of these paintings are actually from the Chamber of Secrets game. So here you can see these are Chamber of Secrets game stuff, and you'll notice there's some familiar textures here. There are some very familiar textures, like, you know, this guy right here. So these textures are kind of very small. You may notice this. This is familiar. What's going on with that? What's going on with this right here? So I'll go to the Great Hall, and I'll tell you. So the Great Hall, again, is another one of those rooms where the layout is uniquely Harry Potter. There's really nothing you can do about it. Like, you couldn't change any of these textures. It would still be the Great Hall, even if this was not textured at all. The general layout of this room is a Harry Potter room. You may notice we've got these beautiful textures on the wall right here, as well as over here and up here. And they look pretty dang good. And you may be thinking, geez, are those really from Chamber of Secrets, that old game? And yes, they are. This is that texture. However, I did something very clever back then. Back in 2016, there wasn't, you know, fancy pants, topaz, gigapixel AI upscaling, but there was Waifu 2X. So the vast majority of textures, I actually upscaled myself. So this texture right here, for example, kind of blurry, kind of it's kind of really small. Well, in the game, it looks quite good, and that's because I upscaled it and then processed it in Photoshop. So this is an AI upscaled image. In fact, it's very possible that RP Hogwarts SBS was the first ever Gary's mod map to use AI upscaled image technology. Many of the textures in here are upscaled images from Chamber of Secrets. So like this whole trim bit here, this window detail up here, they don't illuminate with flashlights. You can't really see it. Another thing in this room, these statues, I'm not sure which game they came from. They're probably, I'm pretty sure these statues are from the Chamber of Secrets game because they are kind of low poly. These glass windows with beautiful refract textures, I made these custom from scratch. The window lattice structure is, of course, the same used here. So this is like a generic window texture from a Harry Potter game that I use. This is a custom-made model from scratch from someone. I don't know who made this. It could have been Steinman for all I know. But there are a few models in the map that have French-sounding directories, so it was definitely made by a Frenchman. And there's no information about them. They're all packed into separate directories, and they're kind of poorly set up. Like, they're good models. These are really great models. Look, there's a million polygons right there. Wow, cool. But they were really poorly set up. The beds, for example, I'll just go fly down there and show you right now, because we're going to Hufflepuff next anyway. So these beds and these chests were made by the same person, I think. They have the same general look to them. These both as well as that other model, were really, really, really ridiculously high poly and like way too much, like way more than you would need for Gary's mod. And the textures were just like way huge. So I actually went and highly optimized them. And originally these beds, there were 4 separate models for each color. Same with the chest. And those models were pretty big models. So I optimized them and I just made them use skins on one model. So now I can just have one model and change the color, and everything works great. It's very efficient and it saves a lot more space. So in here, Hufflepuff Common Room. This one was an interesting room because this was basically the only reference that I had for the Hufflepuff Common Room is right here. So this is from PlayStation Home. These were some other reference images for what the common room might look like. And you'll see here, there's the stack of barrels. So it actually says in the book that the entrance is hidden behind a stack of barrels. So that is like how I came up with this whole system. A stack of barrels in the kitchen specifically. And as you know, the kitchen is directly underneath the Great Hall, with the idea that the little elf guys, they place the food on here, they're slaves, they do slave labor, and they put all the food down here, and it teleports to the tables above. So that's a little bit of Harry Potter lore. These barrels, though, are actually from Stalker, I think, though I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure these are from Stalker, and so are all of the fireplace woods here. So this wood model, this is also from Stalker, as far as I know. These 2 models, this right here and this, are from Half-Life 2 Episode 2. Very little Episode 2 content in this. It's really not good to use Episode 2 content because you gotta pack it in, and you're not technically allowed to do that, and, you know, it's a big mess. When it comes to Ravenclaw, this was also heavily featured in the PlayStation Home Pottermore thing, I think. I'm not really sure what it was on PlayStation, but it had a 3D model of the Ravenclaw common room, and it was basically, this is more or less the exact layout that you'll see in every Harry Potter game. I didn't use that at all. I completely created a unique design, and I kind of based it more closely on Steinman's original layout. So you've got these, like, you know, blocky chairs on the sides, and it's kind of just like a square room, and I made it look like you're in space, kind of. But this was more based on Steinman's thing, and then over here where the, I guess, you know, sleeping area would be, this, like, circular sleeping area is my own unique custom design. I'm pretty sure everything else in the map, except the Dumbledore office, which is disgusting, and I won't even talk about that one. Everything else is more or less my unique layout. So, like, having 4 classrooms on the corner of each courtyard, that's like my thing that I figured out. The dueling rooms over here in this version, this is the original version of Hogwarts, by the way. The newer ones, this is the library. But this table, this is Steinman's table, and I believe he ripped this texture from some game, probably Order of the Phoenix. This dragon here is actually from Age of Chivalry. So there's a few Age of Chivalry models in the map, including these guys right here. These guys are also from Age of Chivalry. The Astronomy Tower is, of course, my own design completely. This is 100% my design, and of course it still uses Harry Potter textures, so you can't use it. Here's another thing that I pretty much tried my best to replicate from an actual Harry Potter game. This is the Viaduct entrance, and you'll see here in the Order of the Phoenix game, I pretty much more or less copied the situation here. In fact, I've got the same banners, I've got the same entryway. However, in the game, there isn't an exit up there, which I thought, you know, it's silly that this continues out over this way, so I, you know, connected it up. So my version is a little bit unique, but more or less it's the same layout as the game, all the way down to the Hogwarts crest on the floor. Again, this just continues to show that there's no amount of modification that you could ever do to this map to make it not Hogwarts. It's always going to be Hogwarts. So some people claim that I simply took a existing model of Hogwarts Castle and plopped it into Gary's mod. Well, anyone with half of a functioning brain knows that that isn't true, obviously. In fact, it's not actually possible to directly just put something from another game into Gary's mod. You have to like, you know, do quite a lot of work on it to make it kind of compatible. I guess you could just straight up put it in, but you still have to get the textures compatible with Source Engine, and it has to be compiled for Source Engine, which does technically change the geometry, so there is no one-to-one porting, essentially. There is, however, a publicly available version of Hogwarts Castle, or at least it was publicly. I can't find a download link for it anymore. It is something that I used heavily for reference, as well as heavily relied on it for textures. So this is a port of the castle, I believe from one of the Deathly Hallows games. This could also be a amalgamation of different castles from different games. So you may immediately notice huge similarities between this and my map. And you'd be right, but I didn't actually really take any models from this directly. A lot of things I simply used for reference and then modeled myself. So take this for example. This part of the Great Hall building right here. These little tubular spire things. Let's look at mine. They look more or less identical, right? Look. However, you can see there's some texture things going on here. So you've got one texture here, one texture here. Mine's not like that. Mine's uniform. So what I did in this case, I simply used this as a reference and then modeled either over top of it, like to get the same, you know, dimensions, or just looked at it and modeled my own thing. Now, obviously I used the same textures, or at least some of the same textures to get the same look. So this part right here, very similar, but not the same. And you can really see that here because look at this part and compare it to this part. You'll see it's really kind of different. This comes out a lot more on theirs, as well as just, there's a lot of issues with this. So this whole model isn't really appropriate for Gary's mod, at least in the traditional sense. You know, people have taken literally this whole thing and ported it to Gary's mod and tried to make maps out of it, and it's awful. They're always awful. They never succeed, you know. It takes them forever to do it, and they're just dead immediately. The maps are never played by anyone, and it's a real shame. It's a real waste of time and effort. Basically trying to one-up me. It's just a waste of your time. Don't even try to do anything better than me, because I'm the best Gary's mod map maker in the whole world, and you'll never amount to anything that I've made, basically. That is obviously a joke, in case you are severely vaccine damaged. So again, I used this heavily for reference, but there are some things in this that I didn't reference. So like the front of this is very different than the front of mine. You will see certain similarities, like, you know, there's that kind of trim going around, and there's this texture right there. You'll see here, I use that same texture. Mine is a lot better looking. And you'll see here, like this thing, this is not the model at all that I'm using. So this model is completely from scratch, custom. So is pretty much everything here, like this, that. These are all from scratch, custom. But when I have this, I use this as a reference. So here, you may think, oh, there's no way I made this custom. So look at this. You can tell that I made this custom. Look how this indents. Look how this part right here is all messed up and weird looking. Look how this slopes in. There's a two-part slope to this spire. If you look at mine, you'll see here, not only is the little triangle-y bit actually like not messed up, you'll see the sides are kind of different. You'll see the slope of the roof is totally different. And in general, this is just a very optimized model that's made for a skybox model. You know, it doesn't have to be that high poly. It's in the skybox. It was intended to be in silhouette like this anyway. Same goes with the astronomy tower. It's heavily based on it, but of course this was just used for reference, and it was modeled from scratch, actually. This, however, right here, is one of the few things that I did more or less completely rip from that model. As you can see down here, it is pretty much identical. Now I do remember I actually remodeled the bottom part from scratch because it was really messed up, but the top part I kept completely the same. It's the exact same model, more or less. There obviously were, you know, modifications that had to be done to it in order to properly put it into the Source Engine. So here's another thing that you'll see. These things out here, these bits right here, these are not the same ones used throughout the map. These actually were brushwork originally, and I converted them into a model. And you can see they are completely different. Those are entirely my model, again. Same goes for these little lip bits here. This hallway, for example, like this, This is my unique layout and design. Same with this little round bit here. At no point in the Harry Potter games do you enter into the viaduct entrance here, and it's like this. It's not like this at all. In fact, this entrance should lead to what is called like the Great Gallery or something, the main gallery, and it's a big long hallway, and it's very fancy, but it's not like this at all. This is entirely my unique layout. Here's class 1. So all the classrooms are generic classrooms. Many people call this the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. That's because that's what this was based on, but it isn't that classroom. This isn't the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. This is just a generic classroom with kind of motifs from the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. You know, it's an ornate wood roof looking thing, you know, kind of arched. The real one curves and has a whole like office on this side of the classroom, and it's much bigger and it's filled with all sorts of wacky stuff. So this is not that. This one is based off of the Charms classroom from Harry Potter. Very long with bench seats on both sides. So again, this is based on the Charms classroom, but it is not the Charms classroom. Many little models around the map, like these ones right here. This is from Chamber of Secrets game with upscaled textures that also have reflections. And these little jars, these are from Chamber of Secrets as well. Same goes for these books that have Tri-Studios inside of them. These lamps here that are also in the Grand Staircase, these are entirely my own design. But of course, once again, they use Harry Potter textures. That's a Harry Potter texture right there. This is from Half-Life 2. This hallway here, the design of which, of course, is, again, my own. You may notice in this, look at this beautiful model. You probably haven't seen that before. Well, that's because this map right now that you're seeing, you may notice certain things are a little bit different than they originally were. This is actually the Redux version of RP Hogwarts SBS OC for Overcast, because that's what it is, it's Overcast. This was the original map, basically. And it's as close to the original map as I could get it. However, I've done some significant modifications because my intention was originally, after Hogsmeade, I was going to re-release all of the Hogwarts maps as updated versions, and I was even going to release this specific one, the original one, because SBS has no need for this, since it doesn't have the library, and it's missing a lot of features and optimizations. I was going to release this on the workshop for anyone to use, just to play. But that, you know, is a different story now because I don't want to have my assets on the workshop and have that be harming Face Punch. If you noticed, I did take down my 2 asset packs. The one for Hogsmeade, which contains pretty much all stuff that I made entirely from scratch, and the other one, which is the Hogwarts Mystery and Wizards Unite asset pack. So both of those I've removed from the workshop for now until I'm more clear about, you know, what the situation is with Face Punch. Getting back to this, so this map was originally going to be uploaded, and in doing so, I was trying to get rid of a lot of models that were either used just once throughout the map or were models from someone else. So Steinman. These used to be Steinman's little braziers, I guess they're called. These are braziers, and he had these big blocky ones from his map, and he made those. They were in his model path. So I went and modeled my own thing that looks really good and is basically just a drop-in replacement for that. And I did that for a couple things. I even did that over here with the Quidditch pitch. So you'll notice these are really nice and fancy and look exactly like they did in the movie. Well, before the map was using Steinman's hoops and sticks, which were, you know, low poly and not very good looking. Same with the insides of this. So this whole inner bit, this is Steinman's like structure and lattice stairway. However, I did go and re-export this under my own paths because I went and changed it up a bit. I really fixed the collision mesh on it. It was kind of busted in certain spots, and I did a lot of general optimization to it to make it work a lot better and to be a lot more efficient. This part of the school right here is kind of my own design. You'll see in this version, it doesn't have that at all. In fact, this is just for reference and the kind of like ratio sizing certain things, like models specifically. This I didn't actually as heavily rely on as much as I kind of might make it seem. This was more just kind of for reference for certain details, like, the tops of the towers here. Just being able to look at them in 3D, really helped me recreate them from scratch. And, you can clearly see, like, hey, this is definitely very similar to this. But the number one main reference is this. So this right here is the real life actual model of Hogwarts that I think they maybe used this for filming. This was, of course, constructed by extremely talented and genius artists. And in my opinion, this is the definitive Hogwarts exterior. This is it right here. It's perfect. This is what the most mature version of the castle is. None of that stupid crap that comes out this way. It's perfect. It's got everything that you expect in all the right places. The towers are all in the right spots. And you'll notice my stuff's a little bit different. But look, see my Ravenclaw tower? Exactly like this. Of course, another big reference that I use is the actual real, production blueprints for Harry Potter for a lot of things. Like, I have exact, like this stuff, don't, some of this stuff was really hard to find. I couldn't get clear pictures of it. I, was going to buy, a $200 book. This one, in particular, this was, the most helpful. Shout out to Stuart Craig, the main art dude. So this one, even though it's kind of cut off, this right here, I actually used this. I overlaid this part in Hammer, and I was able to get ratios from center to center on my towers, and I ratioed the center of the courtyard right there, and then also the placement for that tower and these towers. So my actual map has the exact ratios of this whole, part of the school. Like, this entire part of the school is exactly as the original designers intended it. So I'll go over here and talk about the bridge, which I've destroyed already, apparently. The interior of the bridge right here, this is actually a model from Skyrim, okay? This is a Skyrim model. The trusses here are my own model that I made myself. And while I did obviously use this as well as screenshots from the movie, which this is more or less exactly the same looking, this part here is completely different. Like, these trusses are not my trusses. I modeled those trusses that are in the map. And this bridge is not my bridge. It's very similar, but it's not the same. I've actually seen many people port more or less directly this, or at least something very similar to this from a different game, into their maps, and it looks pretty much awful. It looks horrible. The reason I use that bridge model is because that's the model Steinman used in his map, and his map actually starts out on the opposite side. So this is kind of where you spawn on Steinman's original RP Hogwarts map. You spawn kind of right here, and you go in through this part of the school, which realistically is a lot better, because if you enter from back here, which, that's not really where you'd be entering. You wouldn't really enter from there, but you can really block off the map that way. You can have one little exterior zone right here, and you don't really have to show much more of the castle. You're just good to go. You can have full interior control after that, and that's what Steinman did, and I really like Steinman's map, but it wasn't really fitting SBS's play style. They needed something new, and there were a lot of issues with it. So that's when they commissioned me to make a map for them, and the rest is history. Over here, you've got these, stone things. These are in the movie. This texture is actually, I'm pretty sure these are from episode 1. The trees in the Dark Forest, of course, are all from Half-Life 2 episode 2. Like every single other map on the Gmod Workshop, they're all from episode 2, because, those are the best trees ever made for Gary's mod. The grass here is entirely custom, although I did take some of the static models from Blackbrook Asylum's textures and modify them a little bit and put them in my sprite sheet. So there's a little bit of that there, but a lot of it is the same kind of color scheme though. And I got the color scheme from Blackbrook Asylum. I think that's the map. It's a really good map. This right here is a Half-Life 2 model that I reskinned. It's the Beware of Dog sign. So why exactly did I put the forest and the, part of the lake over here? Why is this on this side of the school? Why isn't it over there where it should be? Because obviously, if you've been looking at that 3D model, you'll know this bridge shouldn't be here. This doesn't make sense. So the reason for this was, this is basically just a map boundary. So we have this valley and we have water, so you can't go past it. You can see the skybox right there. You can see the disgusting line right there where the displacement intersects the skybox texture. And this becomes a map boundary. We put this here because, SBS for some reason really wanted the bridge, which I was completely I'm not even going to put it in. So they have the bridge here, since at no point was I ever considering modeling that side of the school over there, this part over here, which I call the clock tower entrance, since this is a big gigantic clock tower. Another reason for this whole like hill/valley system is that this whole wall cuts the map off, so when you're out here, you don't render all the 10 trillion trees that are in the forest that are going to destroy your FPS. There are the occasional textures used throughout the map that are actually just like textures.com textures, like this, or this, as well as this right here. That is the basis for the Slytherin door. Now obviously it's clearly not the same, it's very modified, but it is somewhat similar. As I may have mentioned before, this is where I pull most of my textures from, and you can see that by looking at the raw textures folder for this 3D model. You've got this. This is the interior of the Quidditch pitch towers. You've got this nice brick. You've got this roof. You've got this really nice trim that I really like. You've got these super realistic rocks that I use in the fireplace in the Great Hall. This is the texture that's used on those little tiny window things that jut out of the side of, you know, the castle. Here's the clock right here. Here's the stone floor that's used around the courtyards. This is a texture that gives me a lot of confusion with this whole thing, because this is a texture that I see in the Order of the Phoenix games and stuff like that. Now this could be Deathly Hallows game, I really don't know, but I'm pretty sure this is Order of the Phoenix, and that is obviously that texture right there. That is that texture. So that's kind of why I have a little bit of second guess as to where this 3D model comes from. But I could go through this all day and you'll see textures like this one right there that's used everywhere. This one that's used everywhere. This is used on everything metal in the map. Here's the banner right there. There's banners for all the houses. Like, there's the Slytherin one. Here's a texture right there that I use. There's one right there. But it's very clear these are all ported from some kind of Harry Potter game. That's more or less the reason why you can't use my maps anymore, or why you can't even use modified versions of my maps. And this includes Hogsmeade, which I'm not sure is even blacklisted yet, but it should be because it uses all these assets too, and there's no changing it. It looks like Hogsmeade. Even if you changed all the textures, it's still going to be Hogsmeade. Same with Hogwarts. Even if you changed all the models and all the textures, it's still going to be Hogwarts. There's nothing you can do to rework this, short of making a whole new map, of course, that maintains certain similarities to my unique layout design, such as 4 classrooms on each corner of the courtyard. You know, something like that. Something that I might be working on right now, you know? So this is probably a really long, rambly video. I hope it gave you some clue and some cool insights as to like where certain things came from. Like, this is obviously from Chamber of Secrets game with upscaled textures. And if you're curious about where certain assets came from, ask in the comments and I might be able to answer you, or I might not be able to answer you. Like, for example, I have no idea where these school desks came from. No clue who made these. I believe these were used in Steinman's map, and I just continued using them because I really liked them. But no clue who made them. These might be a port from Harry Potter. They might not be. I don't know. And so that's the map. Right there. If you liked this video, make sure you get subscribed. This is probably not the best video, and I know I'm going to spend a few hours editing this one. Hopefully next week, I'll have a short of me probably like eating ice cream or something really stupid like that. Because as we all know, the only thing people care about these days are shorts on YouTube. So get hyped for that.